Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where pharmacists can fill your pet's prescriptions, helping you pamper and protect your pet with pills, peanut butter, toys, and treats. Stop into the store today or visit Safeway.com.
What is happening here? The Rockies just swept a series. Really, 3 wins over the Marlins, who admittedly aren't very good, but no one has been worse than the Rockies this year. Starting tonight, they have a chance to keep the magic going at home against the Mets. Unless, of course, we get another one of those spring thunderstorms. I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, new measles cases in Colorado got here on a plane. Just how fast can they spread?
If you were on the plane or if you were even in DIA and happened to be in line at the same spot, you could have potentially gotten exposed.
Then, new charges are announced against the man accused in the firebombing attack in Boulder. And a clothing company challenges the state's new law to protect trans rights.
The company is saying that they think Colorado's law requires it to speak against its principles.
Plus, a new festival you can check out this weekend.
A lot of excitement and gratitude from Puerto Ricans being like, oh my God, like we've never had something like this here.
It's Friday, June 6th. Here's the news in Colorado today. Imagine you board a plane in Istanbul. Maybe you've just had a great vacation and you're coming home to Denver. But in the weeks after your flight, you develop a cough. Some spots appear on your face. That's exactly what's unfolding right now for several people who were on that direct flight in May. And it explains about half of Colorado's known cases of measles. CPR health reporter John Daly has been learning as much as we can about this flight and the spread of measles here. John, where are the numbers now? How many people have gotten sick from that flight?
Well, we're talking about Turkish Airlines Flight 201. It arrived from Istanbul to DIA Tuesday, May 13th. And as of yesterday, 7 Colorado cases are associated with an out-of-state traveler who flew on that flight while they were infectious. 4 were passengers on the flight. 3 were at the airport during the exposure period, which includes the next day, May 14th. Some were from Arapahoe County, some were from El Paso County.
Now, this happened on an international flight, but presumably some of those passengers had a layover in Denver and went on to other domestic flights. What have you learned about how measles spread on that plane from Turkey specifically, but also how they could spread on any plane?
That's right. It could happen on any plane. The health department told us that some of the Colorado cases were seated within 2 rows of what they call the index case, the infectious person. A child who caught measles was seated further away. Experts say all the people on that plane could have been exposed. Here's Michelle Barron. She's an infectious disease doctor at UC Health.
It's considered our most infectious disease in terms of transmission. And if you were on the plane or if you were even in DIA and happened to be in line at the same spot or on the train, you could have potentially gotten exposed and ended up infected. So, yeah, I think, again, it's sort of hard to imagine until you see it in real life.
Wow. So measles is the disease most easily spread. Another thing that many people may find surprising is that some of those infected were indeed vaccinated. What can people who are already vaccinated consider doing that might help keep them safer?
Well, think of this as kind of a numbers game, right? If you are vaccinated, you can get sick, but generally not as severely. 2 doses of the MMR vaccine are 97% effective against measles, very protective. We're still nowhere near the size of the outbreak that they've been having in Texas, for example. In that state, that had more than 700 cases. The vast majority were unvaccinated or have an unknown vaccine status. We had 2 school-aged children die there. So if you're traveling internationally, domestically too, really, but certainly internationally, definitely check your vaccination status and check what the conditions are like for measles where you're going. And infectious disease and public health experts say wearing a good N95 mask, we remember those, right, from the pandemic, as you travel on a flight in the airport will definitely give you added protection.
People do seem to be heeding the warning here. You've reported that more Coloradans are getting vaccinated with the MMR vaccine.
Yeah, that's right. Data from the state show that MMR vaccinations are up across all age groups, but Colorado's numbers are still below what's needed to provide community-level protection. Also, I should tell you that you can always check the state health department's website to see locations like retail stores, for example, where there have been recent exposures to known cases.
John Daly, thank you.
You bet.
A brief update now on the suspect in the Boulder firebomb attack. He was in court yesterday, where he was formally charged with 118 counts. Since Sunday's firebombing, the number who were injured has risen to 15 people and one dog. As far as we know, 3 people are still in the hospital. CPR's Haylee May was at the court hearing yesterday for Mohammed Soleiman and shared the latest from there.
Among the many charges Soleiman faces are attempted first-degree murder with intent and extreme indifference, assault, use of an incendiary device, animal cruelty, and more. Each count of attempted murder carries as many as 48 years in prison. Soleiman will be represented by a public defender. Boulder County's district attorney noted that the investigation into the firebombing is not over. He said if there are others found to have known about the plan, including any of Soleiman's immediate family members who are now in immigration custody, that they could be prosecuted. These 118 charges are from the state. One federal hate crime charge has been filed, and more federal charges are likely.
That's Haylee May from the courthouse. Mohammed Soleiman is scheduled to be back in court next month for a preliminary hearing. Colorado's newest law to protect trans rights is barely 3 weeks old, and it already faces its second legal challenge. A conservative Christian group is suing the state on behalf of a political clothing company whose owner lives in Denver. CPR's public affairs reporter Benta Birkland followed the trans rights bill all the way through the state legislature, and she's here to fill us in on the latest. This clothing company is called XXXY Athletics. What does it argue in the lawsuit?
The company says Colorado's new law violates their First Amendment right to free speech. The law is called the Kelly Loving Act, and it's named after a trans woman who was killed in the Club Q shooting in Colorado Springs. It makes it illegal for someone to deliberately misgender or call a transgender person by their former name. That's a practice known as dead naming.
How would this law impact a company that sells clothes?
It's not quite clear yet, but the company is saying that they think Colorado's law requires it to speak against its principles. This brand sells clothing that says things like Save Women's Sports on it. The founder, Jennifer Say, was recently on Fox News. Here's what she had to say about a female athlete who recently competed against a trans athlete in a high school track meet.
What I care is standing up for girls like Olivia who deserve opportunity, safety, privacy, and fairness. That's what they deserve. And the adults are just being cowards, spineless cowards.
Benta, you mentioned that Colorado's new law says to be in violation, you have to deliberately misgender or dead name someone. How would that be determined?
When lawmakers wrote and revised the bill, they tried to make it clear that there has to be an intention to cause harm. It's about the individual's action, not just the speech. And they say it's not different from other legal standards around other types of workplace harassment. Here's what Shannon Minter told me at the time the bill was being debated. He's the legal director of the National Center for Lesbian Rights.
Nobody's trying to regulate anyone's speech. This is about a pattern of singling someone out and treating them differently in the same way that, if you use language that's racist or sexist when you're referring to an individual person, that can constitute discriminatory conduct.
I would also note that even before Colorado passed this new law, the state's anti-discrimination statute already included gender identity and gender expression as protected classes. That became law back in 2021. I talked to advocates for this bill, and they said misgendering or dead naming probably could have already been prosecuted even before this update. But as with all of these instances, any case like this can be challenging to prove.
This lawsuit against the Kelly Loving Act was filed by a group that has a history of challenging the state's LGBTQ protections. Can you remind us of their track record, Benta? They have had some success, right?
Yes, the Alliance for Defending Freedom, that's the legal advocacy group behind this. They actually won $1.5 million from the state back in 2023. That was for the owner of a graphic design company who said making wedding websites for gay couples violated her First Amendment right. It's also worth mentioning the national backdrop surrounding Colorado's law. The Trump administration is rolling back a lot of protections for transgender people. That includes the government only recognizing people by their gender assigned at birth, allowing homeless shelters to deny services or housing based on a person's gender identity, and something closely related to this XXXY lawsuit, trying to keep transgender women out of women's sports.
Benta Birkeland, thank you.
Thanks so much.
You have several chances this weekend to take in global cultures here at home. There's the Denver Greek Festival, the Boulder Jewish Festival, or a first-of-its-kind Puerto Rican festival in Lakewood. Jonathan Marcantoni will be there.
I love my people. I love being Puerto Rican. It's a personal mission of mine to connect the different Puerto Rican communities throughout what we call the diaspora.
Marcantoni has made sure this festival is interactive. Too often, he says, cultural festivals are passive, events where you walk around in a circle looking at vendor booths. The Flamboyant Festival will be different. For example, musician Miguel Soldevilla will perform, and he'll be on hand to explain how musicians create the samba rhythm of the Caribbean island.
I have here the güiro, basically a seed, and it sounds like this.
Marcantoni also wants to make sure Coloradans see the uniqueness of Puerto Rico because, he says, people often equate it with other Latino cultures. And he's excited to bring people to the Three Leeches Theater in Lakewood.
Especially Puerto Ricans who have lived here for many years, to be able to have a theater and have an art space that is much more community-centric. It allows Puerto Ricans to kind of like feel at home and feel like, oh, we're not alone out here, which is the common sentiment, the most common sentiment that I've heard.
Marcantoni hopes Puerto Rican culture can flourish as it has in communities like New York, Chicago, and Florida. He says now it's Metro Denver's turn. Festival Flamboyant is this Sunday. It starts with an art market, a book fair, a salsa class, and live music. In the evening, you can expect plays, dances, and comedy. And to hear more from Marcantoni, see the link in our show notes. Reporting for today's show also came from CPR's Andrea Dukakis, Elaine Tassi, Haylee May, and Caitlin Kim. Thanks for listening. If you've learned something interesting, tell a friend. And be sure to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where pharmacists can fill your pet's prescriptions, helping you pamper and protect your pet with pills, peanut butter, toys, and treats. Stop into the store today or visit Safeway.com.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.